am joined by yet another incredible individual who has lived a very interesting life, but we'll get into that soon. His name is Charles Achampong, and he works with ambitious professionals who want to succeed without becoming strangers to their own lives. Through speaking, storytelling, and practical frameworks, he helps people slow down just enough to make better decisions, protect their energy, and live with more intention. Through his best-selling book, Around the World in Family Days, and his work with leaders and organizations, Charles champions the power of intentional pause, I should say. His work centers on one core idea, the power of pausing under pressure, not to slow ambition, but to sharpen it. Pausing creates the space to think clearly, recover faster, and move forward without letting the last moment define the next one. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to meet Charles Achampong. How are you, my friend?
Great, Stuart. I love that introduction. Beautiful. I'm doing absolutely very well. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Well, you know what? It's funny because this is one of those situations where I love those kinds of meetings when somebody who you respect, someone you like says, hey, you two should go for a beer. You two should go for a coffee. And our mutual friend Jay said, you guys should get together in New York City, of all places. And we went for a beer, and it was one of those situations where immediately we both knew that this could go on for much longer, but we both had to get going. And but what I really appreciated about that conversation was the fact that we just became fast friends so quickly. It was just one of those real small world moments.
Agreed. I'm always very leery of these kind of blind dates. And I'm like, where is this gonna go? I'm kind of casing the joint, looking for where the exits are in case I'm not feeling well or have an emergency I have to deal with. But the conversation was amazing. Yeah, you kind of usually, I'm like, this seems too good to be true. So, we were emailing back and forth. I'm like, okay, it doesn't seem too crazy. Another fellow speaker, and then we chat. And I'm like, wow, it's as if we're, again, fast friends, but it's as if we've known each other for eons. So this is.
And especially with dudes, the one thing that you can kind of find out quickly is whether or not you have the same sense of humor.
Yeah.
And more specifically, it's can I go there with that joke? Because we all know what it's like. I mean, I was talking to a guy not too long ago, and it was one of those first moments where he's a fellow dad, and we started chatting for much longer than the usual, hey, how's it going, a couple of things about soccer and the kids and how, my god, weather these days. And this was an actual stop and talk, and on a couple of occasions I did what I normally do, which is joke around, have some fun. He was not going for it. He was just it was like a deer in headlights, and I thought, well, we're not going to be friends.
It's hard because, I've been there, done that. And part of me is kind of are you looking for, it's that whole thing as you get older. Some people have this kind of school of thought, I'm not looking for any new friends. I've already got the friends I have. They get me. They understand me. And then there's this other school of thought it's always nice to meet another kind of quote unquote kindred spirit. Someone who kind of, gets your humor, sees your kind of point of view, is open to your ideas and suggestions. I feel like that is, the world that we live in this day and age is so few and far between. So when you do gravitate to someone and when it actually connects with someone, you actually feel that there's something there, you want to be able to kind of go with it. And so I feel like it's often that doesn't actually happen. Usually it's a hit and a miss, at least I think. Yeah.
Do you feel like we're living in a world now where people are just holding their cards so close to their chest, where I don't know what it is, they just don't want to allow themselves to share personal parts of themselves, or get vulnerable, or even just offer their opinions on big topics like politics, religion, you name it? Are we getting to the point where we're just afraid to speak honestly to each other?
Oh, I actually think it's the opposite. I feel like people overshare. I feel like people, it depends on the situation, the circumstances. Maybe I should, there's a caveat to that. People tend to overshare when it's on social media, or it's when, you don't have that interaction, right? You get into a lot more detail, and you get into, you talk about your routine, you get into all kinds of nuances and detail. Whereas when you're having a bit of a more intimate one-on-one conversation, or even just with a group of friends, I don't necessarily think that people get into that level of detail. So I guess it depends on the context, but I just find in general that people delve into far more detail as I think about even my kids or even kids at a certain age where they get into far more detail about all the different things that they're going through, I'm like, really, do you need to get into that level of detail? You hardly even know this person. And this is the
Right.
level of detail you want to get into. So I, yeah, I actually think that people overshare far too much than they
May,
need to.
and maybe that is a social media thing, right?
Yeah,
Where it's incredible to think that how willing we are to show pictures of ourselves
yeah,
in some of the most intimate moments. I always find that one odd where I'll see people, here I am waking up and
yes.
here I am brushing my teeth and whatever it may be. And you think, first of all, you think that somebody even wants to see that.
Do I care? Yes.
Right. Yeah. I remember that there was like a period where you would see people taking pictures of themselves in settings like here I am in a restaurant, for example. My friend's
Yeah,
gone to the washroom. Well, and I
yeah,
take a picture of myself. I remember when cell phones kind of gave us that capability. In the beginning, you would notice that people were like a little embarrassed to doing it. They would do it
yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
Now it's become so socially
Oh,
acceptable that they set the shot up, they really hold it, they don't get it right, they take it again.
yes. So
And I
contrived.
watch this and I think, aren't you embarrassed at all for like
And
always feeling you need to take a picture of yourself?
yes, or you always have to be on, or you have to depict every moment of your life for the rest of the world to see this, the food that you're eating, the people that you're with. Can you not just, and this is where, I've been on one end of the continuum where before even getting into this whole kind of speaking, putting myself out there, where I was the complete opposite. I'm like, does anybody actually really care what I'm doing versus what's the balance of me kind of promoting and talking about what I'm doing? Because if I don't talk about what I'm doing, no one's going to actually know about it and actually hire me for the thing that I want to do, right? So
Right.
it's that balance, but you often don't take in, it's like when you go on vacation, like you take pictures of everything. And so do you not ever want to just remember the moment that you're in, like the feeling that you're
Yeah.
going through right now, the sun hitting your face, the tea that you're drinking, the background conversation you're hearing in the
Hmm.
background. Like, just take it all in because you won't get a chance to experience this moment again. So yes, I understand when capturing the moment, but sometimes it's nice to be able to, when you're going through a stressful moment, of just remember that time when we were in and putting yourself back in that scenario and situation, and just remembering. Maybe, yeah, pictures can do that for you, but I often feel like the sensory piece is the piece that we often often underlook.
I feel like we're living in a period where we are going to look back at this moment
Mm,
and it will have to be in a position where we look back at it for us to know how maybe insane it was or how detrimental or how unhealthy it was, right? We're
yeah.
in it right now and it's become acceptable. And yet it won't be, I think, until like another 10, 20 years we look back and go, look at the way we acted during that time. And now look at the results. I feel like that must have been the way with smoking cigarettes at one point,
Yes. And
you
like
know?
I often wonder, it's funny you say that. I often wonder, like, what are the things that if my kids, who are 9 and 12, if they decide to have kids, what are the things that their kids, my grandkids, are often going to be thinking like, wow, grandpa, you guys did that?
Right.
You're smoking, or even smoking in the doctors. Like, this is like an episode of Mad Men here, where they're drinking alcohol in the office, and there's like the Friday afternoon, someone comes around with a bar cart, depending on what kind of sector you're in, whether that's more acceptable or it's palatable at a certain time of day. But or, you think about, there's a lots of conversations about the washrooms, right? And there's a male bathroom and the female bathroom, and some places have become a bit more open-ended where they're like, listen, everyone has access to the same facility. There's a lock behind the door. You go do your business and leave. And you just wonder, like, what are the things 10, 15, 20, 25 years down the road where people are going to be like, wow, where we saw it as normal, and they'll be
Right.
like, seriously? What was I thinking?
I sometimes joke about this with an audience. I'll say, "Don't you think it's amazing like when you look back at pictures of yourself like 30, 40 years ago and you
Yeah.
think, "Oh my God, I cannot believe I wore that. And I
Yeah.
can't believe I did my hair like that." And of course, everyone nods and I say, "And isn't it unfortunate to think that you're wearing all that right now?"
I I love it's funny because I was going through an old album for some pictures about something I was posting about, and I came across an old photo of me playing basketball. So there I am posing with all of this hardware and these medals around me with my little mini afro and shorts
Yeah.
that are way too short. And my sister-in-law was in town. She's like, "What happened to you? Because I think you're still wearing those shorts." And she pointed out, the kids started laughing because I've never seen you with hair before. I'm like, "Oh, because you look better without hair." There's this whole thing, right? And so it's funny how fashion, all that stuff changes. But I often like, what is the things? I mean, I think everything we're doing now, this is normal, right? But in society changes, it evolves. What's normal now will definitely be abnormal 5, 10, 15 years. And if anything, the speed of that abnormality will, I think, actually happen much faster than we anticipate.
I think you're right. The one big one in that category that I think, and there are so many that we're going to look back at. Like, could you believe, like, even like, for example, myself, I love going out for a beer with a friend the way you and I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I love sitting at a bar and I just love the social aspect of it. I just like, the energy and chit chatting with the
Yeah.
bartender. But there is still a part of me that's conscious enough to think that there will come a day in the history, or in the future, I should say,
Yeah.
where people will go, can you believe people used to go into bars
Yeah.
and they would drink poison and they would like, and then they'd feel horrible the next day? Anyway, and it's like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm aware that's gonna happen. I'm still doing it. I don't mind being stupid, consciously stupid. But the big one within this category that I
Yeah.
really think about is that people are going to look back, and I don't know when this will happen, but I think that they're going to look back and go, can you believe people used to work? And
Mm.
and when I say that, I mean, can you
Okay.
believe that people dedicated themselves, such an enormous percentage of the population,
Ah.
to jobs that they were not excited about,
Huh.
with the intention of producing more, getting more, consuming more, eating more? They were never happy with, like, a hamburger. A hamburger had to have, like, we
Right.
have to have 4 layers to the hamburger. We have this sauce to the
Right.
hamburger, or coffee. Another great example. We used to
Right.
just drink
God.
coffee. Now it's got to
Yes.
come in 15 different
Yes.
versions.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with it. I think that as humans, it is our innate, I guess, part of our system, of part of who we are, to look for better ways to do things and look for ways to improve, which is awesome. I think that's great. But to think about how hard we work
Oh.
to get all of this, and then we spend, knowing we have such a short period of time on
Mm.
planet Earth,
Mm.
that's the amount of time that we spend 40 hours a week
Mm.
doing something we don't like. I think that we're going to be laughed at in thousands of years.
Yeah, and even in many cases, even more than 40 hours. Like the whole kind of switch and transition from the industrial revolution to the information age, that type of thing. But have we not always kind of, maybe the amount of work that we do is far more than it was in the past, because we still give up a certain amount of our, like a significant amount of our time towards work. At least we have in the past, and maybe that work was much more labor intensive as opposed to more kind of knowledge based and using your brain as it is now. But like, yeah, it's true. I often wonder, because if we're not working, then what are we doing? I had this conversation with someone earlier today about everyone wants to work towards retirement. And then you get to retirement, and the dirty little secret is that, most people are alive. They're not actually doing a whole lot of entertainment. They're actually bored out of their mind, right? And I was like,
Right.
oh, very interesting. She goes, yeah,
Yeah.
we have to kind of keep up with appearances to show everyone how busy we are and how we're doing all these things. But we're individuals that need to be kept busy. We need to be producing doing something, at least that's, contributing towards a bigger cause. I'm like, oh, that's a very interesting point of view. We kind of make retirement as this kind of holy grail. But to your
Yeah.
other point, the thing for me is, I often love seeing it through my kids. This idea of going to the movie store, right? To the rent a movie, right?
Yeah.
And the number of five, I was so happy to see that the local video store around the corner from where I grew up closed down because of the fact that I had like $50 in fines from like refusing to rewind the movie or returning it late. And then I'm like, well, and then I used to think, I'm like, was it me who contributed to this, to the downfall of this video store because I didn't rewind my tape? Please be kind and please rewind, that whole sticker that they had on the tape. And I think of my kids and now how everything's on demand, right?
Right.
They're so infatuated with commercials now. We'll watch the Super Bowl, and as kids they'd be like, why do they keep showing this show with the throwing around this thing? And like, oh, we want to watch the commercials, right? And so for them, it was such a novelty, whereas for us, we want to fast forward, for a particular generation, we want to fast forward through those commercials. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting. They still can't believe that we went to a store to go choose a movie. Like, well, what if the movie wasn't there? I'm like,
Yeah.
if the movie wasn't there, then you were out of luck. That was it.
Well, you know what? A thought I had, exactly. If it wasn't there, you were
Yeah.
out of luck. And sometimes, as you remember, you would go up to the person behind the desk and you'd see if someone had returned the movie,
Mm.
right? And then maybe you could still have a chance. And I used to always feel like that was like the biggest score of the week if I got the movie I
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
I was talking to a woman today about AI, and I said, and I give a lot of thought to AI, and I do a lot of
Hmm.
reading on AI, and I find it really interesting. And the other day, I was thinking about, the notion of how long will it be
Hmm.
until we find ourselves in a situation where you sit down at the, call it TV, the entertainment center in your living room at night with your
Yeah.
family, and you verbally say out loud, this is the kind of movie I want to
Hmm.
see. I want to see a horror film, and I want to see these characters of this ethnicity, of these ages, and I want it to not be more than 90 minutes, and I want to be scared at least 20 times. Like, you'll be able to curate your own movie, and boom, it'll pop up, and then you'll watch
That's
your movie.
interesting.
You'll even be able to put yourself in the movie
Oh,
if
that's
you want.
cool. I was even thinking like 3D, like it comes out of the screen type of thing. You can actually watch it in 3D type, where you're gonna have the glass or whatever it is. But that's oh, I love that.
It'd be
I
pretty
forgot about that.
interesting. I mean, and this is
Huh.
where, like when I do talk about the idea of the world changing, and
Yes.
at one second I might sound like I'm a curmudgeon and say it's changing too fast, but then on the flip side, it's like I get really excited about certain types of changes. And in this particular case, I've always felt that there's such an unfortunate disparity between entertainers and how much money they make, and the people
Hmm.
who are their customers, who essentially make them as rich as they are.
Hmm.
And I've often thought there's no problem about, in my mind at least, with them making millions of dollars for what they do. But then there does seem to be a certain number when it gets to a point where, especially with concerts, for example,
Right.
and that is like, really, like $700? You want me
Right.
to pay $700 for a ticket? Like, this is going to be a $700
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, with that said, I have been frustrated with like how expensive movies have gotten
Yeah.
over the years, and a lot of that is because of the salaries these people are getting. And now we see with AI that we quite frankly could soon be in a situation where
Hmm.
they don't actors are being replaced with avatars.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that was one of the pieces? I think it was an ACTRA, whenever the major strike was several years ago, and there was a huge point of contention amongst the individuals that were on strike and AI, and I don't even know at the end how they resolved it or what language they put in the agreement that allowed everyone to kind of go their separate ways. But yeah, that is it'll be very interesting. It's interesting about the $700 concert. I often wonder about these things, and I don't know where the fault lies in all of this because at the end of the day, someone's paying that rate, right? You look at what's
Yeah,
going on now with the World Cup, where the World Cup
right.
coming to our respective points and places in the world now, and people put the point. I mean, this I don't want to just say capitalism 101, but market and what's supply and demand and all that. But someone puts the rate out there, and if someone's willing to pay for it, I guess that's what the market would bear. Like to me,
Yeah,
it seems ludicrous as well because it's never the amount of money you pay for these things never ever equates to the experience that you have, and that
no.
experience is very subjective too. But I'm with you. I'm often surprised and shocked about people willing to pay that, but there's a demand for that. Otherwise, people wouldn't be pricing it at that amount.
Well, I heard recently that here in New York, now that the New York Knicks are in the finals,
Yeah.
someone told me that the tickets, front row tickets,
How much?
are going for $250,000 a piece. And now, okay,
Chump change.
I
Chump
will,
change.
and I can only imagine that. I guess if you are
Yeah,
Timothy
bro.
Chalamet, who likes to be there, and you just made $30 million off your last movie, I guess. I mean, maybe $250,000 to him is like $25 to you and I.
Oh, God. So do they actually pay for their tickets? That's the other thing I don't know. Do they get them comped
Well,
because they're so and so and they're zooming in and you want to make sure that you show the people who are there. I don't know. How does that all work?
I
You
think that
ever done that?
certain celebrities, without a doubt, are either comped or are given significantly reduced tickets because of the cachet that
Oh,
comes
they
into
are.
the game because of them attending. Um, However, though, I would imagine at this point now, I mean, in this particular situation, you'd be like, well, I hate to break it to you, Timothy Chalamet or Ben Stiller
Yeah,
or whoever it is. It's like
yeah.
I got a lineup of people who are just as famous as you who want that spot, right? So you're not even
Oh,
special being a celebrity
I
anymore.
would love to be a fly on the wall for that kind of conversation to see how that all
I
transpires. Like,
know.
whoa,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, now
Gee.
here's shifting gears for a second onto something that you do, I think, genuinely believe in the importance of spending money on,
Mm,
which is travel.
mm,
And I know that your book is about you and your wife choosing to like go, hey, screw it, like let's pull the kids out of school. We can kind of
yeah,
homeschool them along the way. And you guys took off for, if I remember correctly, it's about 11 months,
yeah.
and you toured all around the world to all kinds of different countries. Um, Let's talk about that. First of all, where did you get the idea? You're sitting around having, dinner one night. You say, you know what we should do tomorrow?
That's essentially what happened, Stuart. Like honestly, this happened on our. So the story of my life is the fact that I am always playing checkers while my wife plays chess, and so she's always like 10 steps ahead of me for like everything.
Right.
And I readily admit that because it's not that difficult to play 10 steps or be 10 steps ahead of me when it comes to anything in life, right? But so we're on our honeymoon and we're having I feel it was like dessert, the last few pieces of whatever our shared dessert is, and she kind of puts her hand on mine. She goes, "I have something to tell you," and I'm thinking to myself, "This is very ominous. Like what? Like come on! Like the ink is barely dry on our wedding certificate. I'm like, is this going downhill? Like, is there someone else? Is there something going to love child? Like, what's going on here?" She goes, "No, I've been thinking about this a lot." I'm like, "Okay, this sounds like a very cinematic." Like all these pauses, and she'll say something, then she'll stop. I'm like, come on, spit it out,
You
Janice. What
gotta
is
go.
it,
Yeah,
right?
give it to
Come
me.
on, give me the goods here.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I want to take our future kids on a trip around the world. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, trip around the world, future. We just got married. We just bought a house with a massive mortgage. We just started new careers. There are all these justs, and you want to take these kids that we've not even kind of given any kind of consideration to how many and when and all that on a trip around the world. I'm like, what? I'm like, no way, there are no kids. So what
Yeah.
trip around the world, right? And so honestly, she put this idea, and she's like, and of course I would humor her. I would humor her like anything else. I just, okay, we'll create a little account, a little section on our account, and start sending aside money for this thing. And yeah, 12, 13 years later, there we are on our trip around the world, just under a year, 8 countries, 4 continents, with 2 kids that have opinions on absolutely everything. It was just an amazing, despite that amazing experience, surreal that we even did it. And it was all thanks to her on our honeymoon, putting that topic on the table and making it happen.
That is really that's insane. Like that's just
Yeah.
incredible to think about that.
Yeah, folks. Technology, I know, and I screwed it up. And the funny thing is that now you've come back to this podcast. If you didn't see it before, I was putting on these bright blue headphones, which Charles said that he thought I'd put my daughter's headphones on, which I thought was quite hilarious. And I just then told him a story about how my headphones were left behind in an airport recently. I replaced them with these ones, and I got the bright, like light blue because I thought, well, it'll be easy for me to not lose them because I was just coming off having lost them. And never once did I think, this is not the greatest color for podcasts.
I mean, I'm not even wearing my glasses yet. I can see how bright blue these things are. This is what that's the other thing I'm gonna add. But they bring out the color in your eyes.
Oh,
they
well
happen to be. But yeah, exactly.
well played. My eyes are blue. My eyes are blue.
See? Boom.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so this is my, okay, you know what? This podcast just keeps getting better and better. And so we had to restart a session, so there's going to be a little weird edit in there, folks. But either way, you had just told me that you had gone to all these different countries around the world. Your wife had said to you, during like your honeymoon, one day when we have kids, we're going to do this. And you're like, all right, slow down, but you did it. How many countries again did you do?
8 countries, probably even more than that. But we spent predominantly most of the amount or a large part of our time in 8 countries specifically over the course of the 1 year. Yeah.
Okay. And how did it change your children going through a process like that?
Oh, good question. Well, from a very tactical perspective, my kids, particularly my eldest, is very picky when it comes to food. But when you are, Stuart, in the Arabian desert, in the middle of, around the corner from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, that little kind of pinnacle there, and you're there in a place called Wadi Rum in the desert, and they give you food to eat, and you're kind of, God is looking at you as if to say, like, where are my French fries and chicken McNuggets, my side of carrots type of thing.
Yeah.
And like, this is what we have to eat, so you can either wish for that food or roll up your sleeves, wash your hands, and dig in like the locals do. And she did. And so like the amount of just trying things and being open to things and the kind of inquisitiveness and curiosity of life and just the sense of just spending time speaking to other kids and other adults, right? And so I feel like my kids changed significantly. I mean, we did these cooking classes in every country that we traveled to. So that and just kind of going to the garden and getting the vegetables and whatever the thing may be. So it was and just opening their eyes beyond their four walls to see like, oh, other kids, this is the way they live, and this is the exposure that they have, and these are the things that they go through. Even actually, the other thing too is I enjoyed spending time in the classroom. We'd go South Africa in particular. We went by this place, and school was taking place. I'm like, let's go in and say hi to the kids. And of course, everyone's like, whoa, 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 whoa! Like, who are you? And why are we going into the school? We need permission, Dad. Why do you always do this to us? I'm like, we're going in. We went in, and the teacher's like, come on in. What's your story, right? And for whatever reason, everyone throughout our trip, the running joke is that we are from Chicago. I don't know why everyone immediately just said, you look like you're from Chicago. So I'm not kind of Chicago vibe or look that we were giving off, but yeah, it great time. And to see what, and I'm even more excited about what they're going to do, how this affects them going forward in the future. We're going to work, play, all that stuff. So media, yes, but in the future is even where I think the sweet sauce for me is to see how this influences their own kind of personal and professional trajectory in life. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's like this is the stuff that they're going to remember the most. And I always remember talking to somebody. Somebody recently was saying this, and they were saying how the times that now their adult children talk about, when they're around the Thanksgiving dinner table, are the moments where they went on a trip together, they went camping together, they went to a cottage together, whatever it may be, even just tobogganing together, these kinds of things. And it is something that I think that we all know intrinsically, but at the same time, we don't act upon. You know, like somebody was telling me about this dad who had this idea where it dawned on him about, of course, how short his time will be with his children throughout their lives before they start going off and becoming adults. And he had whittled it down to the number of weekends he was going to be having with them. So he decided that once, I think it was either once a month or once every 2 months, maybe once every 2 months, he was going to do something. Epic would probably be too big of a word, but something really interesting. And so, like, let's say, for example, going to a water park, spending a weekend at a water park. That would be like, we're going to make that memory together. Another one might be, we're going to go on some really epic hike, whatever it might be. And because he had said that if he did it that way 6 times a year and really just planned around that, and I think it was going to be, he would get to himself to a point where he'd have 70 or 80 of these really important moments with his children. And it struck me to start doing it myself. And I start thinking about doing that not just with my children, because I think that sometimes sounds a little too cliche, but also to do it with ourselves.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Yes.
Yeah, you know,
no, it's true. I love that, because I was like, I thought you were going to say the knee-jerk response, or the piece that you were going to mention, I thought you were going to say it was with your partner or significant other. But I'm like, we never spend time with ourselves. I enjoy just going to sit at the bar and just having a drink and just either chatting with the bartender, or just taking things around. I even leave my phone at home, you know, and just look around, and so I don't have any. The time I have with myself is just as invaluable as it is with someone else, and just to even go for walks and just to reflect and think about it. I love that. Great. I love that, even that thinking around the milestones and moments. I've heard people talk about the number of summers that they have with their kids or with their parents or whatever it may be. So that I love that framing. When you can put it in something that's very quantitative in a very discrete period of time, that makes it much more real and tangible for most of us. So,
and I find that I'm also such a better version of myself to the people around me when I do show myself that love. You know, we've all heard about, like, when you're on a plane and, you know, you put your oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on to the other person. And we've heard versions of that. My favorite version of that is when I learned that on a physiological level, the heart actually pumps blood to itself before it pumps blood to any other part of the body. Right, so it takes care of itself before taking care of other organs, and
not know that
makes complete sense. Like that, you know, it's like that seems like a smart thing to do, because without me, nothing else gets any. You know, so when I realize that, I do try to consciously sit and read a book, or, like you said, go for a walk or spend time with friends, like the stuff that fills me up. And I come in and I'm really just in a better mood with my kids after doing that. And with my partner and whoever else it may be. So what do you do now when you guys find yourself like, is there pressure on you now when you think about vacations that we have to like always top what we did, or we
No,
have to kind of like do some other better place?
that's a great question. No one's ever actually asked me that. I think the pressure is maybe self-inflicted in many cases. Like I often wonder, do other people, like it goes back to this whole thing of how much, I often think, Stuart, that we're in our own little world. We think about ourselves more so than anybody else ever does. Right? And so this notion that is anybody wondering and grappling with, where is the Achampong family going on vacation in 2026 this summer? No one really cares. I don't want to diminish our vacation, the time that we have, but I think it's more self-inflicted because I often feel, there's a bit of, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but there's a bit of like, okay, where is everyone else not going that we can go so that we can have an interesting story to tell? Or, we're going to Montenegro this summer. And so, first of all, no one even knows how to spell Montenegro, let alone even know where it is on the map, right? And so that's something I'm like, it's a unique story. But so it's not doing this necessarily just for other people or just to make it seem like it's special or different, but I gravitate to if everyone's running that way, I want to go this way. And so often if anything, the challenge is often the fact that our kids' expectation of vacation is like through the roof, but what we can realistically do on an annual basis is somewhere around here. Right. It can be very difficult to convince my kids to go see my parents, grandma and grandpa in Ottawa, or my in-laws in Saskatchewan when we've just been to, Albania or Thailand or, fill in the blank. So
Right.
The pressure is there, but it's often, I think, self-inflicted versus what other people are thinking.
It's such a good point that when you make that, we're talking about the ego here, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I know there was a period of my time in my life before I had children where I did some pretty epic travel in the sense of like very off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of for a while there known as like, where are you going next kind of guy, right? And then when of course the kids came along and they slowed things down, and plus you just get to the point where, well, some of the places I was going, it would just be unsafe to take children, and then other places it would just be they wouldn't appreciate it yet, so I wouldn't want to waste money on it, and so my ego started getting involved where I started going, like people would say, where have you been lately? And I'd be like, well, I went to Niagara Falls. And they're like, took my kids to the wax museum.
Yeah.
But again, like, why do I care so much about what other people think? And you're right. They're not thinking about it. They're literally just asking, where have you been lately?
That's it.
And so, I mean, that brings us into such a bigger topic though, right? I mean, how are you dealing with, your own ego with respect to taking the plunge from moving from a kind of a guaranteed paycheck corporate job into the obviously not so guaranteed position of being a presenter and a keynote speaker and an author? Do you find yourself, even within your own social networks, feeling like, well, until I become the guy who's making $10 million a year, I'm not legitimate? Like, what's that? How are you grappling with that transition?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I actually, it's hard when I'm at a cocktail party or some sort of reception meeting other people. I could easily hide behind a title and a recognizable company that I'd worked for as part of my career. So people could easily put me in a box. But now, and I think we chatted about this as well, like, does it ever feel normal? You're like, it doesn't ever feel normal, this kind of work that we're doing, right? And so I'm like, to your point, I don't think I would be considering myself as legitimate until I get to some sort of, I don't know, whatever the income threshold may be, whatever the financial dollar amount may be. But even then, I still be questioning myself and thinking not to the next level, to the next level, and it goes on in perpetuity. So the thing for me is that I have never felt this fire in my belly, this excitement, this joy for life, this enthusiasm, this idea of betting on myself. I'm like, man, why have I not done this sooner? But then, everything happens for a reason. I'm fortunate enough that I have a career that I can build a foundation off of, where I now feel that I can bet on myself because I have a bit of experience, letters behind your name, or experience on the road, or a career that you've established in different companies that are recognizable to other people. So there's a bit of legitimacy out there amongst the ecosystem in the world out there. But I'm fully embracing this thing. I would see this as a disservice to myself if I didn't see this thing through. Whatever this thing is, speaking, facilitating, workshops, or whatever that whole thing on this kind of concept of the power of pausing, right? And so, and it's that, for me, it's also because of the fact that it's resonated with so many people, this idea that you don't need you don't need a passport to pause, right? You don't need to go on vacation. You can find pauses to weave into your day-to-day life so that you can stop living on empty and start living more fully in your life. And that's the thing that really excites me when people gravitate towards that message, towards the work that I do. And so it kind of really invigorates me and fills my cup. So this transition has been, I don't say seamless, but it's been much more smoother than I anticipated or expected.
Well, I've always loved the expression, the universe loves speed.
Ooh.
And for some people, they might replace that with God loves speed.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So for myself, I'm not a religious guy. So it's the universe, meaning when you align yourself with what matters and what you're excited about and what you're meant to do, things happen quickly. And so
that's interesting.
It doesn't surprise me that it feels really natural and really good for you. And, the fact that certain conversations or certain people are reaching out to you or certain people are inviting you to come to speak to their group, whatever it might be, it's all happening because the universe is like, hey, I'm a big believer that the universe is saying, I'm here to help you. Right. And again, you can replace this with God or angels or whatever you want. I'm here to help you, but you need to give me something to work with.
Yes.
Right. And so until you quit your job or until you move to that new country or until you start posting on social media or write a book or with a thing you want to do, I can't get people to read a book that hasn't been written.
Yeah.
So give me the book and then I'll get people to read it.
Yeah, man, you got to put some skin in the game. Meet me halfway type of thing, right? And it's hard. I used to think of that stuff as being too woo-woo. Two rainbows and unicorns. So I'm like, no. But to your point, like I feel like either I'm being guided or there's things that are happening to me where I'm like, how is this happening? This seems too good to be true. And it's bad because I sometimes think I'm like, is the shoe going to fall? Is the world going to come to an end? Is this whole side of my life now going to change dramatically? Because it's not been, of course, nothing's ever perfect, nor do you want it to be. But man, it's been so much more enjoyable and. Maybe you're right. I love that quote. The universe rewards speed or likes speed, whatever it is. But I'm like, things have been moving so much faster than I could have ever anticipated in the last 18 months that this has been happening. That, man, I'm just enjoying the ride. It is a thrill.
You have to, and just keep opening yourself up to it. Now, when you talk about pausing, though, where do you feel like people need to pause most these days?
Yeah, boy. I think most people don't pause because I think they're afraid of what they'll see. And I just feel like they're afraid of what they'll see in terms of where they're spending their time, their energy, their resources, whatever it may be. And I think it might we're not very comfortable with quiet. So I think it's agnostic of profession or individual, but I think we live in a world that is so noisy that we've never just kind of taken a moment to say, hey, how am I feeling right now? What is my body reacting to? I mean, again, it sounds so funny to be talking about this because, again, this is something that I would never even kind of grapple or even think about talking about, but we often don't listen to how we're feeling because we're kind of prone to go, 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 which is fine. But every now and then I find that to your point, when you spend time with yourself, and you said this earlier, when you're able to take a moment to just kind of stop for a second to kind of recalibrate before continuing on, I have far much more focus and energy and concentration and able to execute better when I take a moment to just reflect on something. Or even when someone asks me a question, to take a bait before responding. Right? So as opposed to the knee-jerk reaction, because I think of all the jobs I've had, and in many cases where I've already had the answer before the person's even finished asking the question, right? Those kind of things, right? And so it just kind of, the result for me is just clear judgment, stronger responses in the moment, and I'm often able to recover faster when things don't go according to plan. So that's my kind of perspective on it.
I love that idea that people are afraid to pause because they're afraid of what they might see.
Yeah.
I think that must be true also in so many of our personal aspects of our lives. One that comes up for me when you were speaking is that something I've done throughout my life is I've often been willing to, and it's very scary, but to pause and ask myself, how are these friendships going?
Oh,
this is just one sliver. And I've really, in some cases, it may not just be friendships; it may be this friendship, singular, and that pause usually comes up, and I'll ask myself that question: when too many moments of not feeling great have happened where it's just like maybe I didn't feel like somebody was there for me, or
within that friendship.
Within that friendship,
Yeah,
or I feel like the person's maybe not making the effort to want to get together with me, or they're always late, or you kind of just feel like the value that you place on that friendship, the way that you show up for it, is not the same in the way that they do. And to me, the reason why that's so scary is loneliness is one of the scariest places to be in the world. And
major epidemic of that,
and we have an epidemic of that. And so I think there's so many people who will just say, well, having a bunch of friends that are 7 out of 10 for me is better than having no friends at all. And I have struggled with this on so many occasions throughout my life where I will eventually move from those relationships. I don't say goodbye,
of course,
but I stop making the time and I start putting the time somewhere else. And it has been so empowering in my life to do that, but it's always so scary to go through that transition.
I agree. And maybe it's just because I've gotten older now, and I just realized that with my finite time, as I think about morbidly the fact that at some point all this is going to come to an end, and so I think about the second half of my life. Who do I want to spend time with? Who fills my bucket? Who do I enjoy spending time with? Who champions the work that I do? And who do I feel a genuine connection to? There's kind of fake it till you make it type of thing where there's so many people who have come across in my life where I'm like, oh God, I was saying to my spouse, I'm like, I don't enjoy spending time with this other couple.
Right.
Like, I don't know what it is. I don't like the way he speaks to the spouse, and I'm like, I just there's something that just ingratiates me. I'm like, it's amazing because they've done so well for themselves, and we always enjoy their hospitality. But I'm like, you know what? As selfishly as this may sound, or as funny as this, I'm willing to forego all that stuff just because of the fact that there's not a connection that's there.
Yes.
And I know for me, in this idea of pausing, I started noticing things that I've been too busy to see. How rushed my thinking has always become, or how reactive my decisions are,
right,
or how little space I have left for reflection to be able to ask those kind of questions. And so that for me is what kind of allows me to think, okay, is this the best use of my time? How am I feeling? What am I reacting to? Asking those thoughtful framing questions of myself, and being able to sit with it and kind of think through the answer and how I'm feeling in terms of the approach from that perspective. Yeah.
And I guess what we're talking about here is, and this is to me a very hot topic in my life, is the idea of living a conscious life as opposed to living an unconscious life. Or another way of saying it, a life of awareness as opposed to a life of lack of awareness.
Yeah.
Yesterday I'm sitting at a cafe, and it's in this really beautiful area where it's surrounded by trees, and it's quite quiet, and the birds are chirping, and I'm working away on my laptop. And this parent their child's having a temper tantrum. I totally get that, and I also support parents who will let their kids just cry it out. But he chose to let his child have a temper tantrum right next to me where I was working. And while this is happening, a woman behind me lights a cigarette, and the smoke is going right into me. And while that's happening, another woman pulls her phone out and starts watching Instagram on speakerphone. And I was like, my entire setting, I went from I thought I might levitate off this chair at any moment because I feel like the Buddha, into I think this might be the first time I stab somebody. And I turned to my daughter who was sitting with me.
She's okay. It wasn't just you.
She was sitting there and she was crocheting really nicely and quietly.
Wow.
And I turned to her, I said, look, we could say something. I think this will eventually come to an end. I said, but I want you to just look at this. I said, these are people who are not living conscious lives. None of them are doing anything necessarily bad. They're making their own choices. I said, but they're not thinking about the world around them and the people around them and how they are affecting those people. And I said, so I want you, as you walk through life, to remember how important it is to live a life of awareness and to be aware of other people around you.
Wow.
And so,
Dad of the Year. Holy cow! Look at that. Impressive.
I get one a year, and that happened yesterday.
I feel so privileged to have heard this. Yeah.
But
Wow.
to your point, when you say, you go out with, let's say, a couple, and I can relate to exactly what you're saying. There's certain couples where I don't like the way they speak to each other, or I don't like the way that they nag at each other, or I don't like the way that they focus so much on, like,
themselves.
Themselves. Yeah, exactly. They don't ask you a question. And so when I see this, I've often walked away and I've said, I don't know, like, if we should keep investing in a relationship. And they're not being aware of how the way that they're showing up in the world and how it's impacting their relationship with you. And so it's almost a curse, isn't it? Right? Because when you get to a point where you become conscious, you start seeing all the unconsciousness around you.
Honestly, and sometimes it's so interesting. I often think, that, are people not self-aware to know that this is going on around them? Is this not common sense? But then you're like, it's common sense, but it's not common practice, right? So this is the piece where I'm like, how do you not know? Because listen, there's book smart and then there's street smart, and one of the things I feel like or IQ and EQ, and some people now talk about WQ, world quotient, right? And so. For me, I'm not necessarily the smartest person in the room. Will never kind of strive to be. But one thing I am very hypersensitive around is just my surroundings, reading the room. And I don't know if it's something I guess you picked up over time, or if it's nature or nurture, or if it's something that it's already innate to my DNA. But I can walk in, I can feel a sense of, even Stuart, you and I. For me. You'll think this is funny, but the tone of your emails, the response back to me, I'm like, this guy seems too good to be true. I think, like, he's got a good sense of humor. He's never met me before. He's making time to have a quick chat, all these things. And then when we sat down and chat, I'm like, I remember coming back to my spouse thinking, like, this guy's vibe is, I really enjoy this guy's conversation. It's hard for me to take you seriously now with these headphones on, but other than that, I'm like, you can't be perfect. None of things like that. But honestly,
hey, if you didn't watch the Smurfs as a kid, that's on you. It's funny because I'm looking at you while we're speaking, and when you said that, I glance over at myself, and then I just immediately go, "Oh my God, you look like that! Look at you! Look at you!" I keep thinking of maybe if I just get the angle right. I feel bad for people who are listening to this because they can't see it. But trust me, just imagine me wearing what looks like sky blue panties on my head. That's what it looks like. But I'm with you. Like I've often wondered that too, about, is it like an innate thing, like in our DNA, that we're just born with it, or is it something that we've developed through time? I do think, though, that back to you talking about pausing, regardless of whether or not you are born with this, call it, ability, if you do choose to pause, anybody can choose to pause. And if they do, they will then put themselves into a higher likelihood that they're going to be able to look at their life with a much more discerning lens.
Correct.
As opposed to just staying caught up in the daily rat race. I'm curious, like, when you speak to corporate audiences about pausing, what do people come up to you at the end and want to speak to you about? Is like, what's their epiphany? What's their, I hadn't thought of it that way? Like, because I would imagine that your audiences are the same as mine, in the sense that they're so busy, 1,000 meetings a day, and then they're picking up the kids from school, and then they're just rushing around. What are people saying to you? How are you opening their eyes in those presentations?
Yeah, I think it's there's a couple of things. One is that changing people's definition of what pausing means. Like, I've often equated pausing to like a comma in a sentence, right?
Right.
It's a moment for you to sort of. And someone's like, well, it could be a comma. What about a semicolon? And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get into an argument over punctuation, but it's a moment for you to breathe, to reflect before kind of continuing on with the rest of your sentence. It's not a full stop. It's not a question mark. It's not an exclamation mark. It's an important moment to be able to kind of assess where things are before continuing on. Because if you don't put your own comma in your own sentence, then, someone else is going to do it for you, whether it's a health setback, a change in jobs, family situation. So you need to be very intentional about that. And I think one of the things that people often talk about is the fact that they say, like, I often thought this kind of pausing meant stopping. I'm like, no. I mean, think about pausing a video. It's an intentional moment where you breathe, take a quick break, then come back to it. It's not stopping. Right. And it's not, and I think the biggest thing that people walk away with is that, oh, I often used to think of pausing as a wellness strategy, but the way you framed it is more as a performance tool. I'm like, oh, exactly, right? It's a way for you to really ensure that you're bringing your best self forward, and to be able to give them tactics to talk about that they can use and employ as part of the work they do, I think goes a long way. So I think that's the big thing of moving it away from the nice to have to something that is going to kind of really separate you from the rest of the pack. And I think the last piece is really around the fact that, seeing pausing as a vacation or as a sabbatical, because you can go, of course, and there's a continuum when it comes to this stuff. And one end of the continuum is sabbaticals and long-term journeys, things that we just did. And the other piece is, on the other end, is where it's actually things that are pragmatic and tactical that you can do when you've talked about all those things you talked about, meetings back to back to back, picking up the kids, activities, all that stuff. So there are moments that you have on your own where you can just, as opposed to driving with the radio on and the news in the background, just shut it off, drive to your destination so you can be alone with your thoughts, right?
Yes.
Things like that. All these things where, you don't need to let the noise of the world get into your own your own ether, your own space around you. And so there are things that I talk about it from that perspective, but really the big thing is for them to change their perspective and definition of what it means to pause from not necessarily a wellness tool or strategy, but from a performance perspective.
Interesting. So you are speaking about pausing as not just something that you do when you need it, or not just something you do when you feel overwhelmed, but rather, make it part of your life as much as you make walking or exercise or eating good food or getting good sleep as part of your life. Like, how many times did you pause this week?
Yeah.
And if your answer is 0, that's a problem.
Yeah, because if you wait until you need it, the same thing. If you wait until you're thirsty, you wait until you're hungry, you go grocery shopping, you wait until you're hungry, you wait until you're thirsty, your body is already, it's a shame. You don't want to have to wait until you're getting telltale signs to show that you're dehydrated, right? By then it's too late. It's figuring out, like, how do you have your thing of water, like a jug of water here that you can take sips throughout the days that it's sitting in front of you, all these things. How can I ensure that, my buzzer goes off every hour on the hour that Charles, you need to go up the stairs and come back down, to be able to stretch your legs a little bit. So what can you do? And it's not always feasible for everyone to do this, but what are the things? We have technology that does everything. So you can come up with technology to allow you to have minor breaks in the day, or opportunities for you just to turn away from the screen for a moment, and then come back to it. Things like that. Right. So I think that's the piece for me, is that you never want to wait until you need it. You want to be able to make it part and parcel of who you are and the life that you're living.
Has meditation been part of your thinking, or is that something that you've delved into or read about, as far as like how it plays a role in us pausing in life, or is that something that is just hasn't got onto your radar?
Yeah, I've not done. I mean, I've done a little bit of it myself personally, but it's not something. I know. I feel like it's become a bit cliche in many ways, right? And so it's not something I've kind of pushed on anybody, and I try not to be too prescriptive. It's hard because people want to be able to walk away with certain things, and so I give them a few guides and sort of points of direction, but I'm always about, you have to find people to give them the opportunity to lead within. I don't want to be that sage on the stage. I want to be the guide on the side, right? So I don't want to be the one to tell you, thou shalt do these 10 things, and then you're going to walk away, on cloud 9. Here are a few things that have worked for me. This is what the science says in these areas, but I try not to be too prescriptive around it. And meditation is definitely, the science is there. There's so many benefits to it, but I think people have rightly or wrongly, a negative connotation with it, or a certain connotation, I should say, not negative, but there's a certain perspective around it, and so so
many people think it's so woo woo, and because for me, the reason I ask that is one of the surprises I've had in the times where I've tried to just close my eyes, breathe deeply, and calm my mind, is the speed with which my brain races. Yeah. And so, and like that's the random stuff I'm thinking about. And it could be the obvious stuff like work and kids and family and travel, whatever's happening in the future. But then it'll be thoughts around not making the basketball team when I was in grade 8, and I'm like, where did that come from? I'm still upset about that, right? Or, whatever, like you start getting into certain concerns about it could be your health, whatever. Yeah. And in those moments, am very quickly reminded about how beneficial it would be for me to pause from my thoughts. And because I can, and they often say that a large percentage of our thoughts are quite negative.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is something that I've sometimes noticed with myself, where if I'm walking through the streets of New York City and I'll be thinking, oh God, someone didn't pick up their dog crap, or this person just kind of banged into me, or oh, the train is late, and I catch myself. And I'm thinking, I'm being so negative here, and I'm choosing to allow that to be my focus. And then in those moments, I can really see the power of pausing from that as well.
It's amazing when when you're intentional and you choose. Someone's like, you're always so happy, Charles. You're always kind of glass half full. And part of that is just who I am. But the other part of it is the fact that I intentionally start the day with my own thoughts, kind of putting things out to the universe, saying like, this is what I want, regardless of whether things don't go my way, regardless of how the kids wake up, whatever disagreements I may get into my spouse, someone might cut me off in traffic or is rude to me. Like I intentionally, I'm going to choose to be positive. And, for me, this is my year of self-love. I don't set New Year's resolutions, but self-love, giving myself a bit of grace, being a bit more patient, giving myself a bit, you touched on this earlier, giving myself a bit more self-love, giving myself a bit more grace to make mistakes and to just say, hey, Charles, take it easy on yourself, right? And so it's, again, easier said than done, but I'm much more intentional about that. And I have it written on my screen, and have it written upstairs in the bathroom. The kids think I'm kind of crazy and all that, but and I'm hoping it kind of rubs off on them, but being much more intentional about it so that, at least I can move further along the continuum, as opposed to like, I'm just going to be open. I'm in a good mood, and I'm just going to be open to whatever the world presses my way, and I'm going to react. If things go wrong, then that's going to completely derail my day. Some days that happens to me, and like anybody, like you said, I'm human. We're human, but I'm much more intentional about being content and finding the joy and the happiness in the things that I do. I find that journaling. And meditation is one piece, but I find that when I write my thoughts out, I'm able to sleep much better and much more deeper at night. And writing out one thing that brought me joy during the day is often one of the things I enjoy doing as well.
That's so great. Yeah. And that into itself is also a pause. Like, you're pausing before going to bed and pulling a journal out, pulling a pen out, and going, I'm going to intentionally write this. Yeah. As we kind of wrap this up, I want to ask you, what are some of the big kind of tips that you do give your audiences as far as either pausing or taking time for themselves, loving it? What are the areas where you say, okay, like, if I could get you guys to do anything, it would be this? Yeah, I mean, and again, it's at the level of being too prescriptive, but I feel like the journaling thing, I think, really works well in terms of getting your thoughts, or even in some cases, some people don't want to write things, and they rather just kind of verbally give an update of what they've gone through. So that often, getting it off your chest, I think, goes a long way. For me, I'm a big proponent of, it also sounds a bit woo-woo, but just walks, and even just the forest bathing concept, but just being alone with nature and just getting through the day, and that goes a long way. This will sound a bit, and I'm always looking for ways to kind of de-stress. One of the things I do is that I volunteer once every couple of weeks at my youngest daughter's school in helping kids read. And I don't know why I do know why it brings me such joy. It's a pause from my normal routine, but I enjoy spending time with young people because they really just simplify the things that are going on. There's a kid around the corner from us who's 4, and we're always chatting. He's like, I feel like his dad is like, I feel like you spend more time with my son than you spend with me, right? Type of thing. Is because everything brings him. We'll go and there's a rapper, and then we'll spend about half an hour talking about this rapper on the ground that has just kind of made him so ingratiated in all the things that he's doing. So I enjoy spending time with kids and just kind of getting myself outside of my normal routine from that perspective as well. I think it also, the positive affirmations, I think, go a long way. Whether I'm in a moment of quiet at my desk, in the car, just reciting a few phrases and words to myself, just to remind myself of the things that I've accomplished and who I am, and that that I'm in the right place at the right time, that I'm doing the things that I need to be doing to really kind of reaffirm and reiterate the things I should be doing. So there are things like that as well. Yeah, those are the things I tried to engage. I've spoken to one executive where he talks about, we set up this thinking chair in his office where he just sits there and looks outside and just kind of reflects. Doesn't do anything. It's pre-programmed where he gets in half an hour and he just looks outside. Sometimes, he falls asleep. Other times he just is very deep where he says, my best ideas come when I'm just
no one knows, the door's closed, my assistant knows not to bother me. Half an hour, I just look out and gaze out the window, and just kind of reflect on the day that's taken place. So those are some of the things that I generally talk about from that perspective.
I really like that. It reminded me just there of one of my favorite things about flying, and there's a lot of things I don't like about it, but I'm forced to sit and be stuck in a chair.
Yeah.
And I know that I can make a choice of putting these amazing headphones on and watch a movie.
Yes.
Or I could chat with the person next to me. There are options.
Yes.
But for the most part, I just choose to sit quietly, and I'll look out the window if the sun is out, and I'm like, okay, I can see the clouds, and just thinking about life. And quite often I come home, and one of the first things that will kind of come out of my mouth with my partner is I'll say, "Oh my God, I've got these really great ideas. I got to share these ideas with you."
Boom.
It's because of just sitting quiet.
Yeah.
Which, today, I don't even think there'll be even one moment where I sit quiet. After this, I got to go see somebody, and I'm sure you got things. So you've got to schedule your pauses, essentially.
That's a great way of saying, you got to make, in some cases, it'd be great if you could make them a bit more serendipitous, but based on the world that we live in, you can't do that. You need to pre-program those times in your day, and, guard it like it's the most important thing, that you have going on that day. Because if it's not, then it's just going to fall by the wayside, and you won't get a chance to actually find those pauses in your day. And it doesn't have to be, anything that's big or grandiose or extensive. I love the example you talked about earlier, with, doing these kind of crazy or quote unquote epic things. But often, I don't know, I find I remember the most inane and things that I've done with my mom or dad, things that were things that they remember that, oh my God, how much time, money and planning we did. Was I remember, vividly my dad, buying us hockey sticks before Christmas and playing hockey with him. My parents are from Ghana in West Africa. They didn't grow up playing hockey, but getting a hockey stick and playing with my dad outside while it was snowing, he will never remember that. But for whatever reason, I don't know, it was just something that was so atypical to him, right? And we got the neighbor's net and all that other stuff, but that stood out to me. And I'm sure there's things that he's done with me that I don't remember that were, or him being my soccer coach and showing me tips and tricks, all that stuff. So, it doesn't have to be. You don't overthink it. Make it as simple as you can, so that you can make it as practical and pragmatic as you can.
Yeah, you're right. It could be something as simple as noticing, your partner is sitting on the couch, your husband, your wife, whoever it may be, and you think, I could go into the other room and go do work, or I could just come sit with them.
Yes.
And it may only be, I could still do the work later on. Or I see my kid says, that, can we go throw the ball around? Well, instead of saying later, like, I could pause right now.
Yes.
I could do this right now. And again, I think that I love how, even just being conscious of the importance and the power of pausing, as you say, all of a sudden now, once you know it's there, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And so you start looking for it in your life.
Yes.
It's like that cliche thing, like the first time you get pregnant, all you see is pregnant people everywhere you look, right? Same idea, right? Which is like, all of a sudden I walk away from this going, okay, I need to start pausing more.
Right.
Even between now and the time that I go to bed, I guarantee there's going to be a moment where I go, okay, let's just pause for like 5 minutes right now, because of knowing the power that it brings. Listen, Charles, you and I could talk forever.
Oh, God.
And we know that. And but what I want to say is, thank you for being the kind of person who's willing to take the risk of throwing yourself out there. And, being willing to, like, when you decided to move on from your old job, you thought about this idea of writing a book and this idea of going out there and speaking. And you've probably had many opportunities to pause and say, maybe this is not the best for my family. Maybe this is not the best for me. I should go back to safety. Yeah. And to me, the thing that makes the world so special is when people are willing to be unsafe. And I mean that in a positive way, because obviously there's many unsafe ways that are not positive. But when someone's willing to explore the highest versions of themselves, and I think that only brings so much more to their communities, to their families, to the world around them. And so thanks for being one of those champions on planet Earth. And I really think that that people who are listening to this right now, who are thinking about bringing a speaker, especially now, should be giving some consideration to the work you're doing, because
Thank you.
the one thing everyone's doing right now is going crazy about AI.
Yeah.
And everyone's in a race. We got to be able to be like the next experts in AI. And if there was ever a time to pause while doing that, so you can still keep doing it, but just pause every so often and remember like what makes a team work. Remember what brings you together. Remember what makes you whole. You still need to be making sure you're bringing that into your life while you're in this crazy race to become the next experts in AI. So we'll make sure that we get all your tags and all your links below this podcast, whether it's on the video, whether it's something that people are listening to. But thanks for being on the show.
Oh, this has been such a joy, Stuart. I love what you mentioned around being the highest version of yourself. I think that's what we all aspire to. So I'm on that journey on my own, but I feel like, it's just a different version of myself where I've strived to attain that and look forward to continuing finding that opportunity of making sure that I'm really putting my best self forward. So this has been such a joy, such a great conversation. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. You really do got to meet Charles, guys, and make sure you do. So this has been another episode of You Got to Meet. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. To all of you, as usual, we will always do our best to find interesting people who are doing good work in the world and to bring them in here and to have another powerful conversation. So you can always check out other shows by following the links and stay in our world. Lots of love to all of you, and we'll see you soon. Take care.